Hi, this is Peter Hans, and welcome to this week's episode of Between Two Chains. I'm recording this intro on Monday, November 21st, and it seems like everything in the market is really melting down from a digital asset standpoint. Um, I hope you find this episode to be interesting and a little refreshing in the context of everything that's going around us in financial services and centralized counterparties. Um, One of the questions we get a lot is what about specific real world use cases for blockchain that don't involve, in essence, trading or financial services or just making money? And this week I am joined by Alex Dreyfus, the CEO and founder of both Socios.com as well as the Chiliz token, CHC. Um, it's a really interesting conversation. Those of you who followed ARCA for some time or have listened to this know of these examples with Chiliz, and it's really using blockchain to better align the sports fan and the organization. It is a prolific brand across Europe, now with the UFC, and also further penetrating the United States. I think it's only a matter of time before this is the primary way that the sports fan globally connects with their favorite organizations and teams really outside of the stadium. So enjoy the episode. Please rate and review, and thank you very much.
This commentary is not intended to be investment advice, investment research, or a recommendation. Please consult your investment professional for your own circumstances.
All right, hello everyone. This is Peter Hans, and welcome to Between Two Chains. Really excited about our guest today. I'm joined by Alex Dreyfus, who is the founder and CEO of both Socios.com as well as Chiliz. Those of you who are really familiar with ARCA, or perhaps investors with ARCA, are probably very familiar with Chiliz because it's been a investment in the ARCA Digital Assets Fund for quite some time now, for years. And personally, it's one of the kind of stories and use cases of blockchain as a technology that got me really thinking and excited about the expansion of utilizing the technology for more than just kind of financial transactions, and really into our everyday lives as a society globally. And with Chiliz, it's really about sports, which is something that I think is great, brings people together and communities together across the world. So Alex, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Hi, Peter. Happy to be here today as well. Happy to be with our friends of ARCA, because indeed they've been following us. I don't know about the investment side and I don't know details, but definitely been following us since a long time. So happy to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, for the purposes of the audience, and I'd love to hear just a little bit about your background, how and then kind of what your vision was with Socios, and then of course Chiliz and the token side.
Yeah, a little bit about myself. French, working in the internet space for the last 25 years. I'm actually in my parents' place in my kids' bedroom due to family reason. And in that room, 27 years ago, I was running a built-in board system, BBS, and I had my first internet connection through a modem. So I've been since the beginning, let's say, of the web and the internet, 1995, 1996, in that space. Evolve or had a very interesting and spicy journey. Was doing online sports betting, was doing online city guide, online poker as well at some point, as a business, not as a player. And sold that 10 years ago, exactly 10 years ago, to a listed company in the US in the casino industry. Made a little bit of money and then reinvested in different ventures. And long story short, 4.5 years ago, almost 5 years now, created Chiliz and Socios.com with a very simple and naive ambition. 99% of sports fans are not in the stadium, not in the city, not in the country of the team they were supporting. And the question for us was, what can we create that is both valuable for a fan and scalable for a team? And we came with the idea of the concept of fan tokens, which is actually even a brand that we own, a trademark, I mean. And in 2018, we created Chiliz, which is first the token and now becoming really the blockchain to support that vision. But we created both a token to support our ecosystem and a product, a consumer-facing product called socials.com. And in 2018, we were barely 10, 12 people when we started. We signed 2 teams that were a European soccer team called Paris Saint-Germain and Juventus. And fast forward, today, we are 300 full-time employees, a little bit more, 9 offices all over the world, including in the US, in Miami. And we are working with 170 teams, I think, globally. And that comes from soccer, of course, but also other sports, UFC, Formula One, esports, rugby, and NBA, some NBA teams and some NFL team. And that's a little bit of our, let's say, background. And the reason today, I don't know when you're gonna release this. So just for sake of transparency, we are a couple of hours or few days after the FTX drama.
Right.
But I don't know where this is gonna go. But my point is, and back to your point was, I believe we are one of the rare blockchain-based ecosystem / product that is actually really mainstream and not about payments, not about finance, but really about using blockchain for what it is, which is transparency and fairness. And the reason I'm saying that is because when you own, and we're gonna go into details, but when we own fan token as a fan, you can vote on decision of the club, of the team, and that vote is actually on chain. So for the last 4 years, or 3 years and a half, fans have actually used our ecosystem and our platform to vote through the blockchain on decision that matters in the real life of these teams. And that has nothing to do with decentralization, changing the financial world, or changing the dollars or whatever. So that's a very unique case.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's there's a lot of people out there, obviously, are focused on, money and what's, hard money, but in reality, like blockchain as a technological innovation offers a lot of different use cases, and this is certainly one, right? Bringing fans together of a certain team or club or athlete, and allowing them to feel, I guess, more invested as a fan in that athlete, not invested emotionally, right? Not necessarily economically.
That's funny you say that, because I was on a stage in Portugal for the Web Summit last week, and people, of course, always ask us, "Hey, this is an investment, etc., etc." As a fan, and the answer is, at least for me, is it's not that because you have a vested interest that it's an investment, and that's exactly the point. Here, you can put €5 or $5, $10, or even more. You do have a vested interest in the team, in the brand, in the community that you're supporting. Yes, it's tradable, but it doesn't mean that 100% of the people who's going to use the product are going to do that as an investment. Everybody wants to engage with the product the way they want, and it's not designed for that. You can use it as this, but it's not designed for that, and that's what matters.
Yep. I mean, so it sounds like if you're, and I'd love to get into some examples, but if you're, if you have some sort of vote or say in kind of, it's not like you're making personnel decisions, right? But in something with the club, there's an actual, utility or use case or some enjoyment out of it, as opposed to, if you own, equity in Nike, it's totally passive. There's no benefits nor involvement.
You literally use 2 words here that I like: passive. So we like to design and to define what we are doing as, and it has nothing to do with crypto and blockchain, is we do believe that the sports industry is going to move from a passive fan to an active fan in the next 5 to 10 years. So fans going to have more involvement. Are they the one deciding the draft, or the draft of the players, or who's going to play? The answer is no. That's not the role of a fan, period.
Sure.
Having said so, there are things that are not business or sports related. In the middle of that, you have actually enough initiative and questions and polls, even though I hate that name, that can be asked to the fans. I'm going to give you a few examples. But the one I use, that I always use as the first one, because it was our first one, is Juventus, the Italian team. The first, so it was, we are talking in November 2019 when we launched our app. There was not even Apple at that time, was just Android. Fans were asked to decide what music do you want to have in the stadium every time we score a goal. That sounds trivial, but for the 8 years before that, the music never changed. And who else except the fans are actually listening to the music that is in the stadium? So it is more than fair to actually ask them, what music do you want to hear? And it worked pretty well because we got a bit lucky. 6th of January 2020, the vote was released. There was a ceremony in the stadium to announce, just before the beginning of the match, the fact that, hey guys, hey fans, this is the new music that you guys chose, blah, 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 blah. And luckily, Ronaldo, the soccer player, scored 3 times that day, and they ended up having 4-0. So they heard that music 4 times. And that triggered the fact that that song, which is song 2 from Blur, that was chosen by the token holders. And the fun fact on top of that is, if you play Pro Evolution Soccer, so the video games on your Xbox or PlayStation, they had to buy the rights for the music to actually put it back as well in the game.
Oh,
so
interesting.
If you play in Korea, Japan, or in US, they had to do that. So we had actually, not a complaint, but they were pissed at us changing the music of that, because they had actually to change it eventually. It was a fun fact that we got to know like a year later, but it was a cool stuff.
Huh. Yeah, no, I wouldn't even have thought of that, but that's true. That is really cool as kind of the first example.
Yeah, and so we have, I think this year, let me think. I think the last 12 months, I'm not sure about the number, but I think it has more than 500 decisions that was done by fans. And yes, it's not always, that deep and that significant, because you don't have enough things to say every week or every month. But for example, we had a team who, approved by Nike, asked their fans, which jersey do you want to have next season? And that's a big thing. We had a team who asked their fans, when they signed a new player that joined during the transfer window, which number do you want that player to have on his jersey? Small thing, but that's amazing. Everybody knows that in US, I will not be the most educated, but Kevin Durant is 7, I believe, and Stephen Curry is 30, because I've seen something about that. So if you were the one that at some point had a chance to choose that between 2 numbers, not everything, it does matter. And so, yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, that is really cool. And you can see, kind of where this can go as it becomes more, as the technology becomes more mainstream, right? Because it could be down to individual athletes, right? Here are 2 options for my walk-up music as a player on the, as Aaron Judge on the Yankees. Which should I play, right? And why wouldn't he want to go with what his fan decides? So, one thing I would love, a little clarification on, because in the U.S., right, we don't have, and I would imagine there's some regulatory, questions that need to be solved before issuing in the U.S. But you see a lot of the NBA teams and NFL teams. If I go to socios.com on the website, I see them there. So Chiliz, I understand the token and the exchange, and then these teams can basically issue the tokens to fans. Fans can buy, sell, and exchange the tokens. But what is the relationship with socios.com, the application to Chiliz?
So Socios is kind of, I'd say, if you see Chiliz as BNB, Socios is Binance, in a way that it's the main utility of the chain and the token at that point. That will evolve in the next few months and few years over time. It has to start somewhere, obviously. Socios is the consumer-facing product where Chiliz is both used as a token and as a chain. As a token, as a medium of exchange between the fan tokens. So if you want to buy a Paris Saint-Germain fan token on Socios, you do need to have Chiliz. Either you buy them from Binance, FTX. Well, I'm not going to use that as an example anymore. Coinbase, sure. or anything, or you buy them with your debit card or PayPal. Actually, in Europe, we are the only blockchain. Not only, actually, no, we are the first blockchain-based business that was approved by PayPal after 2 years and a half of work to have actually PayPal on our platform as a payment method to buy Chiliz. And so you buy the Chiliz, it's a medium of exchange, and then you use it to buy the different tokens that you want to engage with. It uses the chain because every loyalty points, which we call SSU, Socios United, and every voting mechanism is on the chain. There will be more product, of course, that will be on chain at some point, but that's the two main one today. And of course, there are the fan tokens. Chiliz is that's for Socios. From a Chiliz point of view, we are launching end of this year, early next year, the Chiliz Chain 2.0, which is technically a BNB fork or BNB chain fork, should I say, which is an EVM. So it's an Ethereum fork that became a BNB fork that's going to become a CHD fork or CHD chain, and that is EVM compatible, obviously. And that is, I don't like that wording, but that is a proof of stake of authority. So it's kind of a curated chain where you need to stake your Chiliz, of course, but most importantly, the governance at some point, not at first, but over time, is going to be driven by sports property. What does it mean? It means that you're going to have, at some point, maybe NBA teams, but soccer teams, maybe UFC, anyway, partners that we work with, that's going to become node and validators in the chain, and they will become the governance of that chain. So Socios will just be one of them, but not anymore the driving force. And the reason we are doing that is because we believe that sports is big enough to create an ecosystem on its own, number one. Number two, there is a massive network effect where every team and sports property should help each other, and therefore they create value to each other through the network effect and the network fees and the transaction fees that's going to be driven by the chain itself. And three, the curated component, which is more like a whitelisted mechanism, where if you want to issue assets, like for example NFTs on the Chiliz chain, you need to be approved by or whitelisted by the governance. The idea is that's to avoid to have scams and fake NFTs and fake token from sports property or scammers in that space. So we try to create an ecosystem that will benefit the sports space, where we had to initiate it, but eventually we'll just be part of it.
Yep, and become kind of that trusted source. So if I'm Juventus and I issue a fan token, right, and that is paid for, I would imagine, is there's some sort of initial sale or initial auction, and does that money go to the club? So is it a way where they can also raise money?
Not raise money, generate revenue. I hate the word raise money, but it's different because in the past, people always think that when you issue a token, a utility token, it's to raise money. No,
it's a sale.
Juventus is a listed company. If they want to raise money, they can raise $100 million.
Absolutely.
They don't need it. And it's true for Roma. It's true for like 10 teams, I think, that we have that are listed company. My point here is that we launch a few things. First, we are the issuer, meaning that legally, from a legal perspective, we have a dedicated vehicle in Switzerland that is the vehicle that is issuing the fan tokens on behalf of the team. So same way you have Nike selling jersey branded with Juventus, we have the exclusive right to launch the token of Juventus. That company has. Now,
makes sense.
It means that Juventus, we have 20 million fan tokens that were issued, minted. When we launch the token, we have what we call a fan token offering, which is a flash sale of the token. Of part of the token of the supply, like up to 10% at a fixed price. That's what will be the first kind of launch of the tokens. But as soon as you have the token, you actually have a utility because you can vote immediately on something that happens. You can get 10% discount on the benefits, etc. And that's why I'm talking about revenue stream and not raise, because it's not they raise money in order to develop something. No, they are selling jersey, they are selling tickets, they are selling tokens, period. And every time we sell token, because at the end, we are the ones selling the tokens into the market, either as a primary sell or a secondary sell. This revenue, this sell become an income, and that income is shared more or less 50-50 with the club.
Got it. Yep. No, then that's a very important distinction, because it is not an equity offering or a debt offering, or it's not a capital markets transaction. It is a sale of a good, of a utility.
Yeah, we actually even pay VAT at some point on some of this in some countries. And what's interesting is, and Juventus is a good example. Juventus is a listed company. I think it was, let's check Juventus stock. So it was $700 million. The market cap of their token right now, Juventus is small. It's $11 million. Used to be way more, and it's only 3.5 million. So roughly the fully diluted will be 50 million, 50, let's say, right now. But interestingly, you as a fan, you can buy a Juventus share. You can buy for I guess it's cost, let's say 300. You buy for 300 euro a share. What does it give you as a right as a fan? Nothing, nada.
Nothing.
It gives you the right to vote on the General Assembly and to brag about the fact that you are a shareholder, investor, if you want, of the team. That's great. But that does not give you any benefits or privileges as a fan. And fan tokens, on the other end, it costs 3.5 euro today. May cost more, may cost less. You can buy more, you can buy less. But as soon as you buy it, you actually have the right to vote, not on the General Assembly, not on the dividend stuff, and nothing that has to do with the company itself, but has to do with the club, which has to do with the sports component or the marketing or the community. And that's why I like to say that fan token, there is 2 layers of kind of ownership. There is the layer of ownership, or the shares, which are the traditional shares, and you own a share of the company. But fan tokens, you own a share of influence. It doesn't give you any right to the company. It gives you a right to the club on behalf of what the club is going to ask you anyway.
Yep. No, that it is a true utility, and I would imagine the club could also, I think about, right, like if I'm I've been a season ticket holder of the Astros, right, and I can use the MLB app, go into the store, and get discounts in the store there. There's a lot of I guess parallels between that and the fan token, right? You accrue points and you can use it for stadium tours, or like your kid can throw out the first pitch and things like that.
Yes, but then I will say I don't see fan tokens as currency, and that's why I hate actually the word cryptocurrencies, because cryptocurrency,
Yep.
We define everything as currencies where most of them are actually assets. Asset not in a financial way, but still asset as a membership program. A membership program is an asset as long as I own it, or a car is an asset. So for example, when you vote, when you own your fan token of Juventus, to vote, you don't need to spend money. You don't need to redeem it. You don't need to lose it. As long as you own one, you can vote and participate. And so it's not a currency. It's definitely not a currency, obviously. I'm not a big believer, and that's going to be controversial maybe sometimes, but I'm not a believer that fan token should be used in the stadium in order to pay your beer or your hot dog or even your tickets. I believe that if you own a fan token, maybe indeed you could have a 10% discount on the hot dog. But even if, I'm not sure it's the purpose of the fan tokens. The fan tokens are really, in my eyes, about the fans that are not in the stadium, and therefore the people that will never have what you already have access to, meaning that right now, we as a company and we as a product, I tend to say that except the voting, we don't have anything to offer you if you're already a ticket season holder of that team. And that's fine, because your team has probably 50,000 ticket season holder, but still have 5 million or 10 million fans. So the question is, these 10 million fans, what can we offer them? Because they will never come to your city, or barely, and they will never afford to buy a ticket season holder. And again, there are different ways to engage as a fan with a sports property. It doesn't have to be only and exclusively being in a stadium.
100%. Yeah, so I think that's a very important distinction about the currency, right? Because it is an asset, as a fan token that could come with benefits that you own. I mean, I would argue, look, as a season ticket holder, I would certainly own the Astros fan token, because I'd want to vote and say and everything.
Yep.
And just like in the US, you talk about Juventus being a listed company. You have something like the Green Bay Packers, right? The football team are a technically public company, but it's you don't even get shareholder
Not
votes
traded,
or anything.
yeah.
It's just a novelty, right, for fans, and they frame their stock certificates or anything. So this is just kind of like that 5 derivations into the future. I am interested, because I do see, and I was talking to one of the members of your team before we started speaking about entrance into the US and specifically the NBA. My son is we're all big basketball fans in my family, but we get NBA League Pass, and every time he's a big Grizzlies and Ja Morant fan, I turn on the game and I see Socios all over the stadium, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting, because to my knowledge, like, we don't have fan tokens in the US, and it's probably just securities regulation, and are these I wouldn't buy them and think that there's like a expectation of financial gain, but I can understand why it needs to be handled delicately. So, how are you guys currently partnering with teams in the US, and where do you see this going?
So, for plenty of things here. First, we do think that fans today are fans of multiple teams and multiple sports, especially the digital fan, the casual fans. If you live in Memphis, you're a fans of the Grizzlies, that's great. But if you live in Japan, in Korea, you're a fans of NBA teams, UFC, Formula One, and the Premier League. So the more we as a platform, the more we can aggregate teams and sports teams in the same ecosystem, the more we will deliver value to the fan. And value, I'm not talking financially, but as utility.
Yep.
Having said so, in US, it's more or less the only country in the world where there is no guidance and security, that's a pun, about what can be done and cannot be done. And the reason we spent already, I will say, more than $40 million in the last 18 months in the US in terms of promoting what we are doing, it's to educate team owners, regulators as well, users about us, hopefully coming at some point and being able to offer the full scale of our product. The fact that we are not doing, I would say, NBA token or NBA teams token rather, and NFL team tokens, they want it, we want it, users want it, but there is still a risk from a regulatory standpoint that we don't have a clear picture of what could happen. It's very clear from every single individual we are talking to in the US, from lawyers, including regulators, that it's very clear in their eyes that this is a utility token, that securities and everything. But because the brands are so big, we cannot afford to make it wrong. So we rather take our time and go step by step. When you are the Bored Apes Club, when you are a crypto native brand, you can take that risk, because at the end you just damage, if anything, your own brand, and that's your core business. When you're an NBA team, you cannot afford to actually put at risk your brand by doing something that is not yet clearly designed and guided. And that's why we are taking our time. I was in New York and Washington last week. We were waiting the midterms. Let's see where it goes. But clearly, our focus is to do some lobbying, not lobbying, but education. And the FTX drama doesn't help at all, big time. But education about what we do and how different it is from a traditional crypto as they know it. Because when you look at the US landscape, and that's probably sad, most of the companies, big companies, are all about financial. It's all about exchanges, wallets, DeFi. It's all about money. There is barely and I could be wrong, but I don't see a lot of real utility / mainstream products that are not about that. And that's an issue, because for us, we are kind of the only one who have to tell our story, say, hey, of course, we're happy to be regulated. But what we do is different than Coinbase, and it's different than FTX, and we don't do futures and we don't do derivatives. We just offer a utility token that is more or less a tokenized membership program, and this is global. So being alone in doing what we do is great, because we do need this global leadership in that space, but sometimes it's also a flow in our approach.
Yeah, no, I think that's a smart approach. It's definitely the appropriate approach, and I think a lot of what's being built right now is financial infrastructure, right? So these assets can trade, and because there is a little ambiguity. Now, one thing that I think is kind of interesting is you've seen, the NBA issue NFTs, right? Nike issue NFTs. Major League Baseball, you have places like, Top Shot, Candy that are issuing licensed NFTs, which are sold, right? And which have an exchange and can be sold again. And most NFTs, don't actually have any, some do, but don't actually have any utility that comes with it. Whereas what you're talking about is also an asset that is custody and exchanged on a blockchain. It is initially sold, but it has just pure utility afterwards. Like, well, I guess one is do you think that's just kind of a, education that needs to happen, or would there be any consideration to take the Chicago Cubs, they issue a fan token, but that fan token has art associated with it, or the Cubs logo, making it an NFT, but still a token and still have all the utility. If because you could issue 10,000 identical NFTs, right?
Yes, but then they're not tradable the same way. So I have I can say several things here. First, I'll talk about NFTs, and then I will talk about why NFTs are an easier sell regulatory-wise till now, well, rather till end of last year, and it's not anymore. But first, I say, and I always joke about that, but I have a love-hate relationship with NFTs. I love the tech. I hate the hype. The hype, helped all of us, including Chiliz, last year, big time, from a trading perspective, from a branding, from an educational. But the NFT narrative was clearly number one in mainstream media. On top of Bitcoin, you had Bitcoin, NFTs, and that's great because it's kind of easy to understand. On the other end, to your point, is 97% of NFTs don't have utility, and that translates clearly in something that become less valuable, again, not financially valuable for a fund, because hey, what do I do with my with my NFT? And the irony, and as I said, I was in New York last week. The irony, and I actually wrote that on my Twitter account, I'm a strong believer that the NFT narrative for the sports space, as we know it today, is kind of dead, except for fantasy sports like Sorare, because there is utility behind. But for products that are purely collectibles, this is more or less dead for now. The way it's structured, it will evolve, but the way it is structured for now, it's more or less dead. And I think when I'm talking to team owners, NBA team owners, NFL team owners, they see way more value and scalability of fan tokens. And the irony of that is the biggest advantage of an NFT, it's non-fungible. But the biggest disadvantage of an NFT, it's non-fungible. And because it's non-fungible, it's not liquid, therefore it's not scalable. And you have that kind of egg and a chicken thing, that it's actually, the more you're gonna create NFTs, the less valuable from a liquidity point of view it will be, because by definition they will be all different of each other. and you just cannot scale that. You can do that with Bored Apes because you have 10,000 guys, but for a football team, soccer team, or basketball team that has 100 million fans, and therefore you want to have at some point in the life 1 million clients / members. Well, NFTs don't never gonna work for that. Period. And so the irony is, we think, and I'm biased, of course, saying that, but that fan tokens has a much bigger, it's a much bigger opportunity, much scalable opportunity. It's much more global, and eventually we can create more utility, because the utility that you had 2 years ago and the utility you have today is actually, it's growing, because every day our 300 people plus the relationship with the team is to try to bring more utility, more features, opening the platform, doing some API web services where people is going to be able to engage with that, and so that would be my point. And so I had the CEO of a very famous NFT marketplace last week who asked me, Alex, knowing what you know today, would you do your business based off NFT or fungible tokens? And I said, no, I will double down on fungible, because I do believe it's the right way to do it, and it's much more affordable as well for a fan to spend $2, $5, $10, than $100,000 for whatever crypto native, it's different platform.
No, I think that makes complete sense, and I guess the definition of NFT and then how it's used loosely, I think is also part of that, right? Because you can see an asset that's fractionalized, but I guess that is very different than because it could be fractionalized approaching infinity into as many pieces as you want, but that is very different than the issuance of a fan token. When the different organizations, or I suppose athletes or leagues, issue tokens, are they do you see them as having a limited supply over time, or is it like shares where you can just constantly issue more? Because if there are 10 million fans of Juventus globally, I don't know what the exact number is, right? But you only have 1 million tokens. I mean, you're not really trying to create something necessarily of scarcity, right? In an ideal world, all fans can have tokens, or are you trying to create, a model of super fans and casual fans?
So it's funny you use the word super fan, because I use that word sometimes as a super fan 3.0, whatever does it mean. But so the way we design, so first of all, every fan tokens has a limited supply. There is a max supply. It's minted at the day of the launch, and that's it. And the number of tokens is calculated based on the fan base of the user of the team. So, for example, Paris Saint-Germain, which was our first team and the first token we ever launched, we minted 20 million token. A small esports team, we minted 5 million token, and a smaller one, 1 million. And Barcelona, which is one of the biggest brands in the world, we minted 40 million. That's the range we are right now. How did we calculate that? We told ourselves, what will be the number of unique people that could one day, as an hypothetical scenario, own one fan token in the next 10 years? And so we say, okay, PSG, they have 150 million fans, 100 million fans. In the next 10 years, the brand is going to grow and everything. The maximum amount that will potentially, and it will never happen, but that could potentially own one fan token, because we grow and we give even away, doesn't matter, would be 20 million. And we took kind of that reference to build on top and build below. And so there is scarcity, because also people don't buy only one fan token, they buy more. There are also traders and users, and there is different way of consuming the tokens. And there is also what we call a vesting schedule or a release schedule, where we release these tokens over 7, 8, 10 years. So there is a scarcity. What will be interesting at some point, and that will be in 5 years, is to see the value of these tokens based on the brand value as well. And the fact that, for example, today, the Paris Saint-Germain fan tokens are, in terms of value, They are the biggest one. Yet Barcelona is the biggest brand at PSG historically, but PSG seems to be more successful right now than Barca from a financial point of view, from a team, from a sports point of view. So maybe it does translate into the value of this, and that's interesting because at the end that will be the fan sentiment of what's the brand worth. You said something about leagues and athletes. For example, we do not do athlete tokens. We do not do individual tokens. We do only teams, and in very rare case, we do leagues like UFC. We have the UFC fan token, which is difficult as well because you don't root for the league. You love the event, and UFC is a good brand for that. But you will not buy an NBA token as a fan. You will buy mainly a token of a team because that's all teams, because you may support several. And the reason we don't do athletes, we work with Messi, we work with a lot of athletes in the world. We could have a Ronaldo token, a Messi token, or whatever. The reason we don't do it is they die, they retire, they don't have time to actually deliver any value. So we think that as much as will make us a lot of money, it will not be sustainable. So we don't think that launching what you call social token for individual is actually a sustainable product. There is a lot of hype. There was a lot of hype in US. Few companies raise money on that. The reality, it doesn't work. And we are very happy that we didn't do that.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. If the value is around, utility and engagement, you need something that has longevity to it, right? And by definition, a human life is finite.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And this guy, it's interesting because I had a very famous soccer player agent who said, Alex, we don't want to launch a token. We were against it, but we were kind of like arguing and say, okay, what are the cons and what are the pros? The only pros is the money, period. The cons is there is a lot of cons, and one of them is what if the token goes down 30% and Adidas or Nike is calling me and say, hey, the value of your athlete is lower. Look, the price of the token is going down. So should I pay your sponsoring deal 30% less? And that's a fair point. So we don't believe it's the right thing. It's the easy kind of like, oh, we could do a token. We should do a token of Messi or Ronaldo or Tom Brady or whatever athlete because it's cool and we can do it. We can tokenize everything, but that's the good, bad idea.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's, and it's also, given everything that we've seen with FTX, and I think a lot of what's happened in the digital assets world this year, it's refreshing, right? Because you're thinking, long-term sustainable vision and not how do I make a quick buck. So I very, very much appreciate that attitude. That's very refreshing. So I guess, from my own selfish point of view, being in the U.S. and wanting to see tokens issued from U.S. sport teams. What do you think needs to happen? Because I can't imagine it's the kind of thing where the SEC is not going to come out and say, oh, these are fine, these are not securities, right? These are not unregistered security sales, and so is it legislation? Is it some sort of comfort level? What do you think we need to see, and when do you think we might see that?
Well, it's a lot of moving pieces, to be honest, and there is no clear path because we don't know if it's a SEC play, is it a CFTC play, is it another agency that doesn't exist that's going to do that? Utility token that are like closer to commodities should potentially goes to CFTC. I don't know. I'm not the American guy here, and CFTC does give you non-action letter, while SEC doesn't. So we have to wait. I think post midterms, and that's our expectation, but that's also what we are hearing, that in the next 6 to 9 months there will be a clear agenda. And actually, maybe for the good thing, the FTX drama is going to actually accelerate that.
I think
it's
so.
going to ask for a clear guidance. The problem is, I don't want a fan token to be in the same category than a stable coin or than Bitcoin, because it's not. It's a different thing. If we have to go to the same regulation, we'll do, and that's life, and that's okay. But we will have to do a little bit of education around that as well. But it's not about if, it's about when. And we do our work behind the scene. The leagues does their work behind the scene. It will take the time that it will take. The game for us is to be here when it happens.
Yep. I think that's a great approach. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I 100% agree that as painful and frankly frustrating as what unfolded with FTX is, as someone who believes in the technology and has now devoted their livelihood to it, I do agree with you that I think it could speed up the path to regulation, because it's very clear that there's some ground rules needed and transparency needed and reporting needed. So I agree and sincerely hope you're right. So and then I guess lastly we have the World Cup coming up, and is that, I would imagine that's somewhat of a catalyst for Chiliz as well. I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
The World Cup is interesting because every 4 years, 1 month of hype. So as an event, it's going to be great. We have we signed 3 national teams, but sadly only 2 made it to be qualified. We have Portugal and Argentina, which we launched token. We have Italy, which we launched token, but they are not qualified. Bad kitties. I'm very careful in what I say about the World Cup, because I don't want to set expectation. In terms of product, sure, we have our usual predictors. We have promotion. I think we send users and token holders in Qatar as a reward and stuff like this. So I think what's gonna happen is maybe because for a month everybody's gonna talk about football, and you know how crypto is what's happening in football in crypto? Oh, there is Chiliz. Well, yeah, obviously we are number 1 in that space. Having said so, we have to realize that for us, what matters is not going to happen for 1 month, but what's going to happen for the next 10 years. And at least the World Cup ends the 18th of December, but our business doesn't end the 18th of December. Actually, the leagues starts again 5th of January or something like that.
Yep.
And 80% of the teams we're working with actually starts again at that time. So for us, I love the hype. I love the narrative. Of course, it's great from a PR perspective. It's great from an exposure. It's great for people to discover what we do, which we lack, to be fair. So I think it's going to be a catalyst in that way. But I'm not making any promises, or I don't want to make any expectation about how that's going to be great for XYZ reason. Because from a product perspective, we're not going to do much more during the World Cup. We're actually going to do much more after the World Cup, and that's what matters for us.
Sure. No, that completely makes sense.
The only thing that I like, and it's not Chiliz related, and I say that because I don't know if you have the expression, we have to give Caesars, what's the expression, to give back to Caesars? Give Caesars what Caesars something. It's the fact that Crypto.com is the main sponsor of the World Cup. And so you have to imagine that during, I think it's 9 minutes, so 10% of every single matches that's going to happen for a month, you're going to see Crypto.com and the word crypto on the banners. And the beauty of having Crypto.com and FTX or Binance actually there, it's the fact that you see the word crypto. In terms of mainstream, it's actually much better to have them, and we should all collectively thank them for that, because they are promoting the narrative of crypto just by the fact that they are promoting their brand.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a fair point. Definitely a fair point. Yeah, yeah, we saw a lot of FTX over the baseball playoffs and World Series recently. So
yeah, but it's good for branding.
Unfortunate.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. Yeah, exactly. Well, before I let you go, I'm personally curious. Do you have a prediction for the World Cup? Who do you think is going to win?
There is 3 teams that matter for me. Normally, the answer is I love everybody, I like everybody. But first, I'm French, so I'm going to root a little bit for the French team, which just won the last 2 teams. Who has 2 World Cup, and especially the last one. But on top of that, because we work with Argentina, which is run by Messi or lead by Messi, and we are a partner with Messi, I will definitely root a little bit more for Argentina. And we have also Portugal with Ronaldo, so we're gonna root a little bit as well for that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, those are those are three very reasonable choices. Well, good. Well, it was Alex, it was an absolute pleasure having you on today. I really enjoyed the conversation, and Chiliz and Socios, I've always been a huge fan, and learned a lot today, and look forward to watching you guys grow in the future.
Thanks a lot, and hope you'll invite me again at some point when we talk about US or some other products.
Oh, that would absolutely, that would be great. Yeah. Hopefully soon.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks. See you.